What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato here at the DraftKings studio. We got a great show for you guys. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. Fun one coming up today. The Boston Celtics, so far, so good. The job done through 2 games, but we know far from finished. Claudia, what else we got coming up on the show today?
And GoJo, I promise you every Boston Celtics fan is just thoroughly convinced this is a sweep. You couldn't tell them otherwise. And we will discuss that because Luka, they can't do it alone. They go down 0-2, head back to Dallas. We'll talk about Game 3. Dan Hurley, UConn coach, could make a decision today on whether he's going to stay, go for the three-peat with UConn, or head to the Lakers. John Buccigross from ESPN, he will join us to talk the Cup final. But first, I just have to say, GoJo, I'm a little disappointed in you because you go to Las Vegas for the weekend. I'm expecting to get all of these exciting stories from Sin City. I ask you how it is, and you said I had good sleep. What is this? Senior, we have to be disappointed in this one. GoJo.
Hey, listen, I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't know what you want from me. This is a trip of 30-plus-year-olds, guys in their mid-30s, and with my group, mostly fathers with kids that were coming on this trip, which meant that sensible bedtimes were definitely going to be in style. Now, I will say I had the full circle Vegas moment that I feel like you would have been proud of, Claudia, that was emblematic of how different my trip was. The second day that we were going out to play golf. So it was a bunch of my buddies from college and guys that I was catching up with. We went out there for a golf trip. We had some dinners. We did some pool days and stuff like that. But because right now Vegas is going through a heat wave, our golf tee times had to be at the crack of dawn, or else we were going to cook outside. And that was quite literally. I have never experienced heat like there was in that desert this weekend. But when we walked out, our second tee time was at 6:30 in the morning local in Las Vegas. And so I'm getting down into the lobby with my clubs and all that stuff at like 5:30 in the morning. And I see these 2 girls and 2 guys walking back in, all in their outfits from the night before. And the girl just looks over at me and goes, "Wait, can I put this on Instagram?" And then she starts taking a video right in the lobby and goes, "We're just getting back from the bar, and where are you going?" And I'm like, "To play golf." And she's like, "And he's going to hit a hole-in-one today, and I'm going to go to bed." And then she shuts. I'm like, "You're not even going to tag me? Okay, that's fine, I guess." But walked off with that clout. So that was the, I think, full moment where I realized, yes, this Vegas trip is going to be very different than the other ones here, Dad.
I wonder how much people try. You know, they're going to go to Vegas and they think it's to party, and they feel like it's kind of like when you take your kids to Disney World, you feel like you have to get on every ride. You have to do it because you spent all this money on vacation. So when you go to Vegas, you have to party and you have to stay up. When in reality, man, like you said, you got not only a bunch of 30-somethings, but a bunch of 30-somethings with kids. So sleep becomes paramount. The quick story, when me and your mother, Mike, when you and Jake were both born, and you and Jake were just 15 months apart and you were young, we left you guys in Chicago with Papa and Grandma Jan, with Chris's parents, and me and your mother went to Vegas. It's no secret, me and Chris love to gamble. We went to Vegas. We were going to go finally get away, just the 2 of us, go to Vegas and have fun and gamble. We got on the plane. We fell asleep before takeoff. They had to shake us and wake us up after we landed in Vegas. We went to the hotel one of the days. We went to the hotel back at 2 in the afternoon. We said, let's catch a little nap because we were going to one of the shows like at 6 o'clock, one of the big Vegas shows. We went to bed at like 3 in the afternoon to catch a little cat nap. We woke up at 2 in the morning and missed everything and decided, well, we'll just go down and gamble now. But I mean, it is just... So you either go there and you force yourself to party and say, I'm here, I got to have a good time, or you just give in and say, you know what? I can catch up on uninterrupted sleep.
That's fair.
What I say, I did that the first afternoon there and missed our entire dinner. Went back, thought I was going to take a little cat nap at about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and woke up at 1 in the morning, unsure of where I was. Had slept through about 8 phone calls. It was impressive. What I will say I learned this weekend, well, I learned 2 things. Is one, I really need Stugotz to explain the Grateful Dead phenomenon to me, because the Dead were playing at the Sphere in Vegas and have been for a while, and the Deadheads were everywhere. And it just fascinated me because I couldn't name you a Grateful Dead song. I couldn't name you a member of that band. I know they've been ubiquitous for a long time, but I just have no purview on them. And yet there are full-blown custom-made vans showing up at these fancy Vegas hotels full of people that look like they haven't seen a shower in months. It was incredible. And the other thing that I learned was, if you are someone of a certain age, 30 plus, where all of a sudden you're starting to have that physical wear and tear, there is no life hack quite like Vegas pool parties that will make your body feel better. Being in water the entire time you're standing up and partying and taking that load off your back and legs, I feel great because I spent the vast majority of the weekend waist deep in pool water, also with the drink in my hand. And so now all of a sudden you get a little bit of that float, you're a little bit more comfortable, and you feel way better on the back end.
Can I just say really quickly, you're waist deep in pee water, not pool water.
Yes. I was making the pee water.
Yeah. There is nothing appealing to me, nothing appealing. When you guys sent that picture of all of you standing in the pool, there is zero appealing to me to that. Zero.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing, because
it's not heated. It's pee, and apparently it's Gojo's pee, Senior. Why would you admit that?
Yeah. Oh, we all do it.
Because I was peeing in the pool. Yeah, I was in the pool for like 4 consecutive hours drinking the entire time. It had to go somewhere. We were all doing the same thing. The water and the other pee would balance out and kill all the bacteria. It's science. I don't have time to explain that to you guys. And so, no, listen, I think the benefits far outweigh the negatives of the pee water. At GoJo and Golic on Twitter, is a little pee water worth feeling better after a long weekend in Vegas? Because I firmly believe the answer to that is yes. Just like I firmly believe the Dallas Mavericks are in a little bit of trouble right now, y'all. They go up 2-0 in this, the Celtics go up 2-0 in this series after a game that was much closer than game one, Dad. The Dallas Mavericks made improvements, specifically on the defensive end. They came out and, in part, were helping cause the...
I think we may have lost him. Yeah.
I think we may have lost him. To his point, he's right. This was closer. You saw the last game where Boston just jumped out to that monster lead. They were hitting everything under the sun. And this game, it was Dallas who basically led the entire first quarter. So you thought, okay, P.J. Washington hits his first 3. They're making their first bit of shots. You're like, okay, tide's turning a little bit here. But Claudia, Boston is just so, you see that ball pass around and a dude is standing there whistling, a show tune with enough time to shoot a 3. It's incredible. But this game did come down to being close. You're talking a 5-point game with about a minute to go. Tatum gets his shot blocked, and Dallas has got a chance for a layup to make it a 3-point game with about 50 seconds to go. But that shot gets blocked. Who was it? White and Jaylen Brown ran it down and blocked a potential layup. That was it. 50 seconds ago, could have been a 3-point game. Now I'm saying that was it, but that was a chance to get even closer. Under a minute to go. Maybe this one comes down to the wire. But the bottom line is nobody is helping Luka. We said it's got to be Luka and Kyrie. Kyrie has been shooting awful. He even admits he's been shooting awful. Luka, we heard, got downgraded from probable to questionable. Questionable always means you're going to play. To when you get to doubtful that you're not sure. But now he's got the chest area. I mean, he looks like he's 100 jogging up and down the court. He looks like he's in pain all the time, yet he is still getting it done for that team, though he had way too many turnovers in this one and missed way too many free throw shots in this one. But he's the only one. Nobody else stepping up. And for Boston, Claudia, we sit there and talked about, if Jaylen Brown has a better series than Jason Tatum and they win, is it now Jaylen Brown's team? Man, this is a cumulative team. Mm-hmm. They're in 2 games, they've had 3 players score over 20 points. And Jason Tatum wasn't one of them. It was Brown, it was Porzingis, and it was Drew Holiday who led the scoring last night. So their ability to spread the ball out, coupled with their defense, I don't blame you in thinking every Celtic fan should think this is going to be a sweep.
And I thought, honestly, Senior, this would go 6 or 7. I really did, with the way that Dallas was playing, the way their defense looked. That was key for them, I think, getting to this point. But something we knew that was going to be a major concern was the lack of depth. And that's what the Celtics have. The Celtics have been very comfortable in their roles. I think everyone got very happy in Dallas because they saw Kyrie being of impact, but you mentioned something that Tatum has is the luxury of not having to be the best shooter in that game. He can sort of sit back, he can facilitate, which we've been seeing him do. Everybody wants to sort of give him some shade, but I think it's better when he is getting double, triple team on every play. That just opens up wide open for the rest of the squad, and we saw that for Drew Holiday, 9 of 9 shooting in the paint. He went 26, 11, and 3. He's the best player right now in this series, plus 26 for the plus minus. That's the luxury that Tatum has. But on the other side of things, when Kyrie's scoring just 16 points, he hasn't made a 3 yet, senior. He's 0 for 8. Just 12, 3, and 2 in game 1, 16, 2, and 6 in game 2. And I will let you know, since he stomped on that logo in Boston, he's now lost 12 straight games against the Celtics. And I'm a little stitious, I have to say, but I don't think that has too much to play into it. I think maybe the pressure is just getting to him. And, you know, in the press conference after game 1, he said, I don't think the cheers were loud enough. Well, Boston fans heard that. They played it on the Jumbotron before the game, so maybe that pressure is finally coming down on him, but I think it comes down to the depth and Luka not being 100%, and now he's going to be gassed because he is shouldering everything for this team. And then not having defense, that's not a good recipe for even a win. So yes, this could be a sweep. Never mind a series win.
This could be a tough. Yeah, this could be a tough one. Let's hear from the losing side first, because when you lose, there's blame to go around, and Luka and Kyrie talked about the blame.
But, you know, at the end of the day, we got to make some more shots. You know, I think my turnovers and my missed free throws cost us a game. So I got to do way better in those two categories. But at the end of the day, we got to make shots to win the game.
He's not alone, and we're going to tell him that. But, you know, as expected, he's fresh off the court. He's spilling into these emotions. He feels like he could have played better. Just like me, I would take a brunt of that responsibility. The first 2 games weren't the best for me.
So, again, Luka had, 8 turnovers this one, missed 4 free throws, putting a lot of the blame on himself. But he can't do it alone. You look at his scoring in this game. I mean, he's the only one. He hits 32, but only 3 in the fourth quarter. And it was on a 3-point play with a little over a minute to go. So, I mean, between the turnovers and the lack of scoring in the fourth quarter, how much is this guy just basically wearing out? He's just running out of steam here, and he's not getting enough help on that side. And as far as Boston's side, again, Claudia, man, I don't know who the hell you talk about as an MVP at this point, but it's obviously going to be one of the Celtics the way this is going. And now you got Porzingis getting hurt again, lower leg injury. Says he's going to play in Game 3. Certainly didn't look anything like, you know, when he hurt his calf, but hobbled around a little bit. Said he'll be back. But again, they just have different players that step up, and I don't care how much you see it, to watch them swing the ball. And it was something that Jason Kidd, they showed him giving a talk before the game just about them swinging the ball. We got to be able to rotate. We have to. And then at the end he said, and sometimes it's still not going to work, and you just got to play after that. And I thought to myself, yeah, it sure as hell isn't working, because they are just swinging the ball around for wide open threes. And it's not like they were killing them either. They were 10 of 39. I mean, that's a little over 25% or what? So it's not like they were killing them, but when they needed them most, they were getting wide open looks and they were knocking them down.
It really wasn't a great shooting game for the Celtics. That's where the defense came big into play, and just sort of the spread of wealth on offense. I just have to say quickly too, and GoJo, I want to get your take on this, but the fact that Luka had to go in after this game and say, I should have played better. You had 32, 11, and 11. Like, what else could you do? The turnovers are going to come when you're shouldering all that weight. You're not healthy, and you're facing the top defense in the league, GoJo.
Yeah, no, there's nothing more Luka can really do. It's got to be, and this is, I think, the most interesting thing about this series now is we saw so much improvement from the Mavs in Game 2 overall, but still the non-Lukas, including Kyrie Irving, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn shooting most of the night on some looks that were semi-decent. I mean, it's always going to be difficult. There's not a lot of space to be found around the perimeter the way the Celtics crew closes out. And so does the usual bump that we see at home for role players in the playoffs playoffs help the Mavs enough to where they can come back and actually steal game 3. That's the part for PJ Washington and the rest of these guys that I'm kind of waiting to see, because yeah, Luka can go out and get this done. I mean, these were high degree of difficulty shots that for Luka Doncic, it's kind of like we say about 50-50 balls with a great receiver in the NFL. It becomes more like a 60-40 thing. With Luka, those fall-away shots around the elbow are just ones that go down for him. He's that good, Dad. Yeah. Kyrie Irving really seems like he's the swing state going forward, quite honestly, because he's a guy that has seemed most affected by the Celtics defense. Those bigger bodies that they can throw at him on the perimeter have absolutely stymied what had been a player we gushed about all postseason. So I don't know where you fall on that, Dad, or what I missed there, but Kyrie Irving going back to Dallas has a lot of soul-searching to do.
Yeah, he does. And you know what? Listen, we've seen him in this playoff not play well and then play great. So we wondered which one was going to show up. As we said, coming into the series, the two duos averaged 51 points. Tatum and Brown, and Luka and Kyrie both averaged like 51 points. But Kyrie certainly not getting it done there. And when Jason, again, he hasn't scored over 20 points in either game, but, you know, with the rebounds, with the assists, how he's helping to the point where, because we had a couple of words try and say things. Remember after game 1, Kyrie said, I thought the crowd would be louder. So, of course, they played that before the game and the crowd went nuts. And then you had Jason Kidd saying it was Brown who was the team's best player, not Jason Tatum. You know, to why you would say that, I have no idea, but he does.
You would say it to try and go and sow seeds of discord, which everybody saw through. It was the most transparent attempt to try and sabotage the opposing team. And whenever I saw like one Drew Holiday clip where he basically said, yeah, he's probably right, that people kind of ran with, but it seemed like everyone in the Celtics completely understood that for what it was. And knowing Jason Kidd's well-worn history of mind games, Dad, not surprising at all, but objectively hilarious, and I kind of respect it.
I love what Drew Holiday said about the pair. I said, I don't prefer one or the other. I prefer both because they're both superstars and they're showing it on the biggest stage in the world. And he said, how they play together is sacred and something that can't be broken. I feel like when I watch the 10 Commandments, that's one of the commandments that should have been carved into the stone, the way he said it, the way they play together. I mean, it does seem to be true. And listen, and I don't know how much inside they care about all of us saying who's the guy, who's the team. And at the end of the day, who the hell cares if you're one of those players? It's all about putting the ring on your finger. Now, pridefully, everybody wants to be the guy, but Mike, you know this. In every locker room, everybody kind of knows the pecking order, right? Now, in some, it could be a little vague, like in this Boston Celtics room. We believe, we see Jason Tatum and his ability and what he does, but how well Jaylen Brown is playing. But this seems to be a sum of the parts that are getting it all done, right? Not some individual like for this is completely the opposite of a team getting it done, and then on the other side, one guy trying to carry his entire team along for the ride.
I saw Dominique Foxworth and Charlie Kravitz, his producer on the Dominique Foxworth show, I think comped them to like the 04 Pistons, where it's a team that really does not have a true, I could even say, while Tim Duncan is going to be the one that rises above all the rest of them, those Spurs teams also with him and early Kawhi Leonard also seemed like maybe more of a fully rounded ecosystem.
Yes.
And a team that certainly lacked like one true alpha leader. Like I think that's why Jaylen Brown obviously gets thrown into these conversations a lot more, is so much about his game and the way he talks, more aggressive. He was mic'd up last night. You heard him being the one kind of constantly getting in guys' ears and letting them know he seems a lot more comfortable with that role on his shoulders than maybe a Jason Tatum does, even though Jason Tatum went out there and filled up the stat sheets as an assist guy last night. He's taken all of the attention on him and that ability, and he's turned it into creating open looks for his teammates. He's done and adjusted the way he's needed to. We've talked about the LeBron Jamesification of NBA discourse that's kind of allowed because of that now. And so I think overall, this is a team that we've just got to get comfortable in discussing a different way, because even if the opposing coaches tried to sow those seeds of doubt in there, they really don't care who gets it done. I mean, we'll have Drew Holiday finals MVP conversations coming up at some point based on the rate that he has started this series. And we'll have plenty more time to get into that. But coming up next, we have one of the most transparent coaching searches I have ever seen and been a part of that's supposed to come to the final today. We'll see if Dan Hurley becomes the Lakers' next head coach here on GoJo and Golic.
GoJo Golic, head coach of UConn, Dan Hurley, making a big decision today. Should he go for the three-peat or become the new Lakers head coach? Not a conversation we thought we would be having just last week. JJ Redick was the topic of conversation there, but via Woj, UConn coach Dan Hurley told ESPN that the Lakers make a compelling case and presented a compelling vision for him to become the franchise's next coach. On Sunday, he told ESPN that he left extremely impressed with the Lakers VP and GM, and he has been spending Sunday, or I should say, he spent Sunday thinking about a massive long-term offer to move to the NBA. So this is tough because a three-peat with UConn is a great accomplishment, but also to be the Lakers head coach and have LeBron is also a great accomplishment and something to have on your resume. So how do you even make this decision, Senior?
Well, timing is everything, right, for everybody. And where are you in your life? He's 51. He's got back-to-back titles. He could have another bump in salary there. He's making $5-6 million a year. So what's important to you? Or what's the combination of things that are important to you? Geography, we've talked about his wife, loves staying, in New Jersey and more toward the East Coast. How much is that involved? Because that's something that people don't think about. There are family decisions to be made here if you're going to make the move, because we can all easily say, well, you're going to get paid so much money. You can have a house in Jersey, a house in LA, a house wherever the hell you want, and fly to it whenever you want. But there's a quality of living and all being together if that's what you want. There's Dan Hurley. He did say in an interview, I think it was with Dan Patrick a while ago, that down the road, I think he said, is when I'm mature enough for the NBA. But does that clock get sped up because the opportunity is now? Because one of the last things is timing of everything. You're as hot as can be right now. I don't know if you can get hotter as a candidate unless you go out and win a third in a row. So there's the timing of that, which comes with the opportunity to coach one of the greatest franchises of all time. And you can't deny the money that goes with it, Mike. I mean, that has to be part of the process. We hear too many times, oh, it's not about the money. And maybe sometimes for some it's not. But for a lot of people, it is. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think a lot of it is how the stars are aligning in Dan Hurley's life as a head coach, his life outside the world of basketball. And is this the right move to make? I think he's going to make it because he has talked about going to the NBA. He wants to coach in the NBA. He wants to coach at the top level. And this is one of the great opportunities he's going to have to do it.
Yeah, if not now, then when? If this is something that you want to do, and you have this opportunity with this particular team, it seems tailor-made for him to make the jump, especially because as you weigh with any decision, you're doing pros and cons the entire time. And as I look at the situation with Dan Hurley and I say, what's the worst that could happen? It's all right. It flames out after 2 years. He collects a massive check because the Lakers feel like moving on the way a lot of NBA teams do. And then he goes right back to the college ranks, where, as you said, if you preserve Danny Hurley in this moment in time, in the amber of back-to-back national championships in the rearview mirror, as I said last week, any college program who needed a head coach. And in this day and age, man, we've turned over most of the figurehead head coaches. It's not like anybody's sacred at this point. And so if you're a college program, you'd saw off your right arm to have Danny Hurley come in there and instill the kind of things in your program that he did at UConn. Now, it's not to dismiss UConn's role in his success and the championship foundation that we know was in that program, and that there had been coaches that had won national championships in this run prior to Danny's arrival on campus. All that's being said, but any opportunity he'd have going forward would be awesome. So, yeah, no, I do think ultimately, if this is something that he has wanted and has stated as a competitor that he wants and believes making that jump to the NBA matters to him, this seems like the perfect time to do it. And can I just say, Dad, you've covered a lot of these. This has been the most transparent version of this I have ever seen, between Danny Hurley going in and immediately telling his players, hey, these reports are true. I'm looking at this job and I want to keep you guys abreast of the situation. Hey, this is the report to me going out and doing these coaching interviews that we usually don't hear boo about from these people. And he comes right out after and said, no, they laid out a pretty compelling plan. And now to say the timeline, yes, I'm going to make a decision by Monday. I've never seen anything like this. And we know Danny Hurley's a very different character, but this really seems to shine through in the way that this process is unfolded.
Yeah, because one of the things when we see it in football, right around the bowl games, right, when coaches get courted or change teams, and sometimes they don't even talk to their team, which I can't stand. You don't find a way to talk to your teammates. Now here, obviously, the season is a long way away, but there's also the timing of if he's going to go. All these players get 30 days to transfer. It's a tough time right now to be transferring, but you have the ability to do that. So I'm with you. This has been transparent, and I'm still one of those goofy ones waiting to hear what the amount of money is for this one, because when Woj is even saying long-term massive deal, man, I mean, that's just, to me, it's going to be hard to turn down. And we know the NBA is shifting, and when I talk about timing, this is another reason for it, right? The ability to make the three-man superstar team is really kind of gone by the wayside. You know, now it's developing young players, and that's something Dan Hurley has been known for, developing young players in college to be helping them lead them to national championships. So that's going to become paramount again in the NBA when we've been learning, or the coaches have been coaching certain ways. Let's try and get our two or three superstars. It all goes around them. Everybody else just kind of fill in. Now we got young players. We have to maximize their talent. We have to develop this talent.
Well, we'll see if that applies to the Los Angeles Lakers, because that's all fine and good in places like Denver, where we've talked about doing that, or Minnesota in those markets. You could say in Boston that they've had patience with this roster, but it's because you had two bona fide superstars in the middle of all of this. I'm not sure still yet. You're going to have to prove to me, if you're the Los Angeles Lakers, that patience is a virtue that you're going to be able to ascribe to, knowing that organization's history with stars, with being one of the limelight teams in the NBA, really leaning into a model that, yes, we're seeing kind of feels more in vogue right now. But again, that's going to be based on something the Lakers have to prove to me. But you're right. Danny Hurley fits right into that, Dad. And this also fits into part of the conversation about college that we had last week. And I saw Bomani Jones bring this up on the right time, where college coaches in both football, basketball, really every sport, are being asked to wear two hats right now, right? We know some coaches love the power in the pro leagues of being the GM and the coach, of picking the ingredients and then going out there and being able to cook. But in college, the way that is happening now with the financial element of this with NIL is different than it ever was before. And I do think while we're having this period of discomfort right now with some college coaches, and Danny Hurley, again, in that interview with Dan Patrick, talked about the exhaustion of the current schedule for college coaches, I do think at some point that's going to level set. Like, you're already seeing it in football. There are basically people in player personnel roles who don't have the title yet who are becoming the GMs for these teams. And I do wonder if on the other side of this, as we get a more formal system in college where you've got someone whose job it is to manage essentially your salary cap, manage your player personnel acquisition, if it will allow coaches to take a hand off the wheel a little bit if they're people they trust and go back to just coaching, and if that will help the retention of some of the best talent in the sport. Because while I don't think that we've reached crisis standpoint, Dad, it's impossible to ignore that these coaches are looking at the workload in college, and if they've got pro aspirations and opportunities, they are absolutely taking the leap.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, it's amazing to think not long ago, this guy spent 9 years as a high school coach at St. Benedict's Prep before Wagner and Rhode Island. And I mean, his brother Bobby's his brother Bobby's in the family. He's head coach at Arizona State. Also, I got to believe, Mike, they said the decision will come today. I got to believe he already knows, right? Now, there's probably some ducks he wants to put in a row right now, maybe talk to the team one more time before it becomes official to tell them that he is going. I got to believe it's already been made. I think he's going to be going, and I base that on nothing outside of just what we said before. If not now, when? The timing just seems to be perfect to match up the team you can go to, the money you can make, and the fact that you wanted to finally coach in the NBA. I don't know if the timing will ever be better than this.
I would agree, but man, Danny Hurley does seem like a different dude, and he's worn his heart on his sleeve, and he's been so emotional and giving of that in this process. I could seriously believe this was something he was grappling with if he doesn't think he's ready for this opportunity right now in the ways he's described before. We'll wait and see. Today is supposed to be the day, but coming up next, today is also the day we talk to John Buccigross, looking at the start of the Stanley Cup final as the Florida Panthers take that 1-0 lead. Next on GoJo and Golic.
You're here and supporting the Panthers. What does this mean to you?
This is a monumental moment in my life. I have been here since day one of my birth, 2011, and I just can't wait to see my team happily host the Cup. Wow! Let's go!
That sound courtesy of Giselle Espinales' Twitter for NBC6 South Florida. As the young Panthers fan, so hyped coming off game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato here. Wow. Hoping to talk to ESPN's John Buccigross here soon about his reaction to game 1, although I don't know if he's going to have the energy that tops that. Bucci man loves him some hockey, but that little kid in 6 years has really digested a ton of that here. And Claudia, I mean, I have to imagine now, I don't know if Boston's the area that's necessarily going to get the grace in this spot, but everyone's hearing him say, I've been waiting my whole life for this. He's about 6-year-old, is going to kind of roll their eyes, much like we did to your guy's sign kid back in the day who was doing his championship parade tour there. But you got to admire the passion from the young man.
From day 1 of my birth, he says. That is the best way to ever put fandom. I don't know, man. I mean, I do remember, I think my first live sporting event was a hockey game, and there is truly nothing like it. So I have to admit, like, I get this. I don't know if I had that type of energy. And you could tell, too, like, even if both legs were broken, he was going to this game. And he was going to be so happy doing it. The boot was just the best part of this. The energy there. Oh, I'm glad they got the win for him.
For those people just listening to this one later on, if you weren't watching today, yes, Dad, he was in a full walking boot there in the arena, which hockey fans really do mimic the energy of the players on the ice where they're not going to be deterred. We've told the story on the show before, Dad. There was a woman in front of us, the Phoenix Coyotes, when we were there growing up as kids. There was a woman a couple rows in front of us who I believe was pregnant at the time, who took a puck, an errant puck going out of the rink directly to the grill, and then showed up like 2 games later with her nose taped up, double black eyes, ready to go for the next round.
Unreal. That's so hockey.
And it was one of those whiteouts too. So everybody had the white T-shirt on, and there was just blood. We all had taken our shirts off, and we're trying to stop the bleeding. All our shirts were red with blood. But yeah, as Mike said, she was there the next game. I mean, I think they're some of the craziest fans out there, most passionate fans out there, shown by that kid. But you know, this is we talk about one person having the effect they can have. For Luka, it's not going to be enough for Dallas being that one guy. Boston's such a team. For hockey, we've talked about this. In baseball, it's pitching. If you get that pitcher that throws an incredible game, it's difficult to lose. You get a goalie, and Bobrovsky, the way he's playing right now, 2-time Vezina winner. He's 35 years old, second amongst wins with active goalies. But he's going for his first cup here, and he's been incredible. You stop 32 shots, you get outshot 32-18. You stop all 32. Edmonton's a better offensive team. The Panthers are a better defensive team. You get a goalie, as we use that term, standing on his head, which is something he's done. He's beaten, 3 President Trophy Cup teams. So, I mean, if he's going to stand on his head like he's doing, it almost doesn't matter. Connor McDavid had 6 shots on goal. Obviously, none of them went in because of a shutout. So you just wonder if Claudia, if they're going to start to get through. I mean, and Connor McDavid didn't seem worried at all after game 1. Like, they're getting the shots. They just got to go, right? You're playing against a great goalie. You just got to get some shots to get past them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Connor McDavid's too worried because, yes, it was just game 1. They had 4 of the top 5-point leaders heading into this postseason, into this series. So they have the offensive firepower, but you said it. It's the goaltending. Florida was the best team at generating shots throughout this postseason, one of the best during the regular season. So you said it. Florida outshot 32-18. Oilers had an 18-6 advantage in high danger shot attempts. So if that carries on, that's going to be the big worry. The Oilers have the offense, but Stuart Skinner's sort of been a liability. They don't have the goaltending like Sergei Bobrovsky, who's been one of the most consistent goalies in the NHL over the last few years. So I get it. Connor McDavid is Connor McDavid. I'm sure he's not going to be too worried himself. Yeah. But overall, Edmonton, I'm sure they're shaking in their boots a little bit.
Yeah, see, this is the interesting dynamic that we've talked about in the lead up to this. And a tale of 2 games for the Oilers going back to game 7 where they only had 10 shots on goal, but they got enough of them to go in to win this one. Right, this time they reversed that advantage, but it doesn't work out. And you guys are both right. Connor McDavid is not going to worry at all because he's Connor freaking McDavid. He knows what he's capable of, and he knows his better is better than everybody else's better. But the difficulty is for the rest of that group that, again, is getting to this stage largely for the first time. The Florida Panthers were here and lost last year, but have that experience to not hit the quicksand when things go wrong. For the rest of this group, and this is something I experienced in that championship game against Alabama, is the difficulty of getting to that stage and all of a sudden seeing things go wrong early. And when it feels like you're trying to shoot it through a keyhole against this goalie, that's where the issues start up. The issues have ended here for us, and we're excited now to welcome in John Buccigross here. You guys see him obviously all over ESPN, but definitely as the anchor for the NHL coverage on ESPN, and in a phenomenal hat right now. Bucci, good morning. You're looking
very
great,
nice,
sir.
Hello, boys.
Did you wear the hat just so you could do that?
I did, just so I could do. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Incredible.
Very nice.
Well,
So,
Bucci, while we got
Bucci-
you here, so game one underway already. The Florida Panthers lead 1-0 here. As we got started with this one, what's your biggest takeaway from night one in this series?
Really, how good Edmonton looked. Florida certainly came in as the favorite to win the Stanley Cup, but Edmonton has gained momentum throughout the season. They've become a good checking team. They're a fast team. They don't get much scoring from their bottom six, but they keep it even. They keep the pressure on. And so I was really impressed the way they played. Bob has had a good postseason, Sergei Bobrovsky. I think his Hall of Fame resume is just about there now. And he pitched a shutout. He's a .915 save percentage this postseason. That's not outstanding. Last year, Aiden Hill, who helped Vegas win the Cup, was .932. You get .930 goaltending in the postseason, you're usually going to win the Cup. So he's at .915, but he was outstanding. Maybe the start of his career with the spotlight on him. Like I said, 2 Vezinas. He's going to have a career much like Henrik Lundqvist. I think he's already surpassed Lundqvist personally. I know people were debating Bobrovsky for the Hall of Fame. Of course, Lundqvist is already in, but I think he's really showing what he's made of. But yeah, my game one takeaway was really how good Edmonton looked. Will they keep that pressure on and then start scoring goals against Bobrovsky?
Well, that's the thing, because a 7-game series, they generated offense, they limited scoring opportunities for the Panthers. So you sit there and look at their game plan, you say, okay, we did what we were supposed to do, we just couldn't get the freaking puck in the freaking net. So over the number of games, if you get Bob to just keep standing on his head, it's going to be over. But do you expect Edmonton to get back in this and start getting a couple past them?
It's tough because Florida is another great checking team. Some of their breakaways were kind of late developing. They had a guy pursuing him. So in terms of having a clear shot with the guy you want the puck on the stick, one time it was Adam Henrique on the breakaway, but you're not going to beat Bob Lowe. He moves very well post to post. They got to shoot the puck by his ears. That's the spot. So that's what's great about these 7-game series in both basketball and hockey is you start to figure out the other team a little bit. Where can I go? Where do I need to get to? How are we going to try to beat this goalie or beat that defenseman? So it's going to be tough because in some ways it's disheartening for Edmonton to play that well, to provide that much pressure, to get that many shots on goal, maybe to get Florida on an off night and then lose. So that's like, oh boy, what if our goalie lets in a couple of soft goals and then their offense gets going? So there's a lot of pressure on Edmonton tonight. This is going to be really a game 7 for them. Going down 0-2, can they beat Florida 4 out of 5 times? Man, that's a big ask for any team. I mean, it's hard to beat a baseball team during the regular season, 4 out of 5 times. So just to play a really world-class hockey team and try to beat them 4 out of 5 times, it's going to be tough. But it really does fall on McDavid and Draisaitl to try to score goals 5-on-5. Connor McDavid's just not having a good postseason when it comes to scoring goals. It's like, we've almost played a 25% regular season. We're coming up on game 20. So all you do, you just times the stats times 4, right? And that gives you basically a regular season total. So you're talking about McDavid with a 20-goal season right now. That's not going to do it. Leon Draisaitl, he's out a 40-goal postseason. Just times all their totals by 4, and that's what you kind of get. And so McDavid's going to have to try to figure out how he can score, because he and Draisaitl are their best players by far.
Bucci, you got another couple minutes for us here on the other side of this break here. We're up against it right now, but let's get you back on the other side of this and finish up a little bit more of the NHL talk for game 2 next. Thanks, brother. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. here, Claudia Bellafato in the DraftKings studio, and John Buccigross, who, again, anchoring ESPN's coverage of the NHL. You can tune in tonight, the Stanley Cup Final Game 2, primetime, 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC, ESPN+, Deportes, and more. We'll get to some of the stars in this series and the impact they're going to have going forward, but at GoJo and Golic on Twitter, I need the answer. Is John Buccigross a zaddy? Billy Gill from the Levitard Show just texted me that. John, do you know what a zaddy is? Are you familiar with this phenomenon? We've had to deal with this on the show because of my dad for a while now.
Seeing the reaction to your dad, I think I have an idea without knowing exactly what it is.
All right, there we go. Somewhat familiar with the concept. Would you call yourself a zaddy?
Familiar.
Would you agree with that label?
Again, I just don't know the label specific. I'm a specifics guy, so I'm afraid to have an opinion.
It's one of those, Mike, when you ask that question, you have to let others decide that.
That is true.
Okay, we can't decide. It's just like with a nickname. You can't give yourself a nickname and then you let others do that. So you let others decide if you're zaddies or not. And Bucci had the beard before I did. We were talking about in the break. He got his in 2017. I started mine in COVID. So he has been doing this longer than I have. But I have enjoyed how it's hidden a lot of my flaws in the neck area.
Exactly. So it serves an important purpose here, yes. As does John Buccigross, which is far more important than us discussing his zaddy status, would be us discussing the status of this series heading into Game 2. That. And listen, that is very true. We need to keep the main thing on that. But Butch, as we look at Game 2, you mentioned the stars in this series that we've talked about: McDavid, Draisaitl, Tkachuk on the side there, Bobrovsky there. But I want to talk about Alexander Barkov for a second, because we heard Wayne Gretzky with some very, I think, effusive praise for him post Game 1. Just how important has he been for this entire Panthers run here, as Wayne waxed poetic about him being one of the best defenders he's ever seen?
Yeah, he, his status has really risen in this postseason. I've been pretty critical of him in the past. I felt like he's gotten small in the postseason. He was not a factor. And early on this year, and you saw it right away against Boston in that series, where he was welcoming the contact. You have to welcome the contact in hockey, especially in the playoffs. It's going to happen, and you have to enjoy it. You have to, be a bit of a masochist, and you have to just take it. And he has. The first time in the postseason you've seen him take physical play and say, no matter what happens to me, I'm going to do what I have to do on this play. And if someone's bumping me and hitting me, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to have tunnel vision. And he didn't do that before. He had bad postseason numbers. He played soft, he played small, and now he's playing to his size. I always wondered why big hockey players didn't play like they were 5'8" and just bully everybody. I never understood why they don't do that. And he was one of those guys who didn't do that. And now this year he does. So yeah, he plays both. He plays a 200-foot game. His offensive game, he doesn't score goals like he used to be. So I don't know if I'd call him the best all-around player like some people are, but he's a great defensive player, Selke Award winner, continues to do that. So yeah, his sashes definitely has raised the bar. Everyone respected him as a really good player, but it's going to notch up now. And if he wins a cup, it's going to be huge for his career, and he's going to now really be on a Hall of Fame trajectory now for the next 8 years.
Bucci, I wonder your overall thought of Edmonton even getting where they were. Woodcroft gets fired early when they're losing. Knobloch comes in. First couple games are shaky. They go on, I think it was an 8 or a 10 game winning streak, and then here they are in the final. So were you surprised at the run that they made, even though it's a long season, given the start of the season and where they are now?
Yeah, a little bit for sure. Yeah, they did not look good, and they were top heavy. All their scoring comes from two lines, power play dependent. McDavid's injured early. He led the league in goals last year. This year he was more into passing, especially when the 100 assist mark was approaching, and you could tell he wanted to do that. And so he sacrificed shooting for that. And like I said, that kind of carried over to the postseason. He's probably dealing with a little bit of an injury, whether it's a rib or an oblique or something like that, abdominal. These guys always have shoulders and groin issues throughout the regular season. The season ends and 10% of the league is getting labrum surgeries on their shoulder and their hip surgery. So who knows? Maybe that's going to happen to him, and that's why he hasn't quite ticked up offensively in the postseason. But yeah, overall, a little surprised. But like I said, they became a really good checking team with a lot of speed, a lot of size, not a lot of finish. Again, down those bottom six forwards, the third and fourth liners. But yeah, they became a really good checking team, and the defensemen played better. They had no goaltending early. It's still a little up and down. Not even a 900 save percentage for Stuart Skinner in the postseason. That's amazing. They're this far. 4 wins from a cup with a goalie who has a save percentage of .897. So again, this speaks of the will and the drive of McDavid and Draisaitl trying to drive this bus.
John, I was going to ask you that question because you said you liked what you saw from the Oilers in Game 1, but I said heading into this, Stuart Skinner seemed to be a bit of a liability, especially compared to Sergei Bobrovsky. So bettors want to know, you can get the Oilers at pretty good plus money right now at DraftKings. Does that feel like a good play? We're just one game in, so you don't want to overreact, but with the offense they do have, we talked about them generating the opportunities, 18-6 advantage when it came to the high danger shot attempts, or is this Florida defense just too good, especially with Sergei in between the pipes?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'd put some of my hard-earned money on Edmonton tonight. This isn't quite like the NBA, where a lot of times if it's even, that Game 2 is going to go right back to the other team, like we thought it might last night with the Mavericks. But you realize Boston's just way too good compared to Dallas. I mean, the roster is pretty stark. This is different. The roster, if anything, it's going to tilt in favor of Florida, and they're still home. So, had it been switched and this was Game 2 in Edmonton, you'd probably like Edmonton a lot tonight, but still on the road, this is going to be a tough ask. It's like you said, with Stuart Skinner, that's not a guy you're going to lean on, have another pretty good game. He had a pretty good game in Game 1, again, but there's a reason why he has an .897 save percentage, is because he throws in a stinker every now and then, and you don't never know when the stinker is going to come. It's like Golic after a buffet. Like, you don't know when the stinker is going to come.
But you know it's going to be there right on time.
But
it's
coming. It's
a dangerous game to play, especially coming off a weekend in Vegas, playing hurt right now. But that's neither here nor there. Bucci, only a couple minutes left here, but big picture on this, because we've talked about so much of this for Edmonton's been about the build-up here, Connor McDavid's career, not being able to get to this series and finally getting there now, versus a Florida team that was here last year, lost, and now has that benefit of experience. How much pressure is on Edmonton in this series? Like, is there a cliff where after this season, all of a sudden you worry about their ability to get back and close to this stage during McDavid's prime?
Absolutely. Because, Draisaitl, the last year of his deal is next year. So I assume you go to him and say, okay, here's 8 years, $100 million, like maybe 12.8 or 13 is going to be his cap number. So if he says no, what do you do? Do you trade him this summer? Or do you say, well, we're just going to run with it one more time? Because he is Leon Draisaitl, we're not going to get a return near him. We're no longer a Stanley Cup team when we make that trade. Or do we just keep him for another year, run this back, try to tweak again, and then go for the Cup next year? And if we win it and he leaves, fine. If we lose it and he leaves, well, I guess fine too. We gave another shot. So that and then McDavid has 2 years left. And who knows? Maybe someday he wakes up and says, I've had enough carrying this team close to the North Pole. I want to go a little more south. And try something else here. And when I'm 28, 29, I still got another good 6-year runway. It's not going to happen here. We don't get free agents to come here. We have to overplay our own players to stay here, like Darnell Nurse making 9.2. That's a tough predicament for them. So, yeah, there's definitely a sense of urgency because Draisaitl has 1 year in his deal and McDavid has 2.
That sense of urgency is going to lead to a very, very great scene tonight. Again, 8 o'clock Eastern on ABC, ESPN+, ESPN Deportes, the Stanley Cup Final, Game 2. Getting ready to drop the puck, and we'll see if Edmonton can take some of that production from the first game and try and actually translate it into goals in the second game. John, we always appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon, all right?
Anytime. Peace. Miss you guys.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it very
John
much.
Buccigross, again, the great anchor and zaddy of the ESPN NHL coverage.
Yeah. Real quick, along the lines of talking about salaries, the NHL did announce their cap did go up $4.5 million to $88 million with a floor of $65 million. So at least Edmonton can have some money if they needed to maybe pay a little extra to keep some of their players.
Mic'd Up Monday here on GoJo and Golic, and this Monday is courtesy of Caitlin Clark, who's left off the USA women's basketball team for the Paris Olympics. Here's what she had to say about being left off.
Honestly, no disappointment. I think it just gives you something to work for. That's a dream. Hopefully one day I can be there, and I think it's just a little more motivation. You remember that, and hopefully in 4 years, when 4 years comes back around, I can be there.
And Fever head coach Christy Side said that Clark said after this, "Hey coach, they just woke a monster." And I do want to have this conversation that has come out, some reports saying part of this decision was because Clark has such a big fan base, and if she doesn't get enough time, then people are going to be mad. I don't know how much reality there is to that. I want to get your guys' take on that. But then also we just talked about off camera, I should say, the possibility of her being on the alternate roster. So a lot of things here come into play, but also this is not surprising. Anything that has to do with Caitlin Clark is going to become a headline, GoJo.
Yeah, we've entered into strange territory, and I think it was Roger Sherman that said she's become the discourse athlete for this generation. When you think of what we had with Tim Tebow and some others for years, LeBron James obviously has been this in the NBA for the last couple of decades. But Dad, she now is become an athlete where everything that happens with her, every decision that's been made about her, because of the way her star jumped really during her final season at Iowa especially, but going all the way back to that LSU-Iowa championship game from 2 years ago now, this is going to be an unavoidable part of the WNBA discourse until further notice. And it parachuting on the Olympics, another event with massive scope and this thing that we scrutinize every year of roster snubs, but are really going to do in earnest for the first time with this kind of audience for the WNBA and for women's basketball in general, because we have had egregious snubs in the past. I remember doing the afternoon drive show I did at ESPN with Chinea Gwumake when her sister Nneka was left off in a far more egregious snub.
Way more
concerning
egregious.
the basketball resume, especially as a professional, than what we're seeing here right now with Caitlin Clark. But Dad, when you saw this decision come down, what was your first reaction?
Well, first, you're right about Nneka. That was egregious. Oh. And remember, she was also the president of the Players Union, so you wondered what it had to do with. That's far more than this. And can I just say, if that truly is a reason that Claudia mentioned, that they felt all her fans would be bummed if she wasn't playing enough, that's a ridiculous. If that at all came into play, that is one of the more ridiculous reasons I have ever heard in my life, to think that because she has so many fans and they would be mad if she didn't play a lot. I think that's crazy. Also, the next thing I'll say,
just to clear that up before you go on to your next point, Dad, that came from a report from Christine Brennan in USA Today that said, according to two sources that were both longtime U.S. basketball veterans with decades of experience in the women's game, told USA Today Sports on Friday that the concern over how Clark's millions of fans would react to what would likely be limited playing time on a stacked roster was a factor in the decision making. So again, that was one report that we saw that was supposedly grounded in some U.S. basketball veterans, just so people know what you were referencing there.
Absolutely ridiculous. If that truly was even a thought process, it's ridiculous, in my opinion. Second, I'll say what I say about all-star teams, all-pro teams of this. If you think there are snubs, and that's obviously the talk here, I always say, this isn't the, put someone on because they're popular. There's a meritocracy to this. Who are you taking off? That's where I go. Listen, is she a hell of a player? Yes. Who would she knock off this roster? That's where I would go. And if you could legitimately make some questions about, because, you sit there and you have obviously, young ladies that play, women that play guard and forward. You have, I think, 5 pure guards in this. And who is she taking the spot of? I mean, I guess that's where I go. I mean, Chelsea Gray, she's the best guard in the game, right? She hasn't played yet this year, and that could be a situation because of her foot if she's not able to play. But you have Sabrina Ionescu, you have Jewel Lloyd, you have Kelsey Plum, you have Diana Taurasi. So now Taurasi is in her 6th Olympic. There may be some that say maybe it's past her prime for her to go, but that's where I would go. I'm still of the ilk of the outside looking in, but man, you earn the right to play on that team. right? And I mean, because it is an honor. You know me in Olympics, isn't it an honor? So if you're a better player, but everybody else wants somebody else because of what they could bring, I'm sorry, I'm not for that. I get it. The game is growing, and even the discussions we're having shows you that the game is growing. But as a former athlete, I am not about putting someone in because of what they can bring over someone who may be at this time a better player. Listen, Caitlin Clark is going to be in more than a few Olympics. I have no doubt about that. But we're talking about this one right now. And that's where I would go. Meritocracy. Who deserves to be on this team by their play? And if you're putting her on the team, who are you taking off the team?
So I'll say this first off. Caitlin Clark's response to this, all exactly right. And to be clear,
yes,
as we've had most of the discourse around her, you're excluding that. She's done everything the way that you're supposed to do
yes,
it, in the way that you'd want a star player in her position, with all of this ungodly pressure to be able to handle it. She's shown she can do this and is working her way just fine. I mean, in lieu of this announcement, she had 30 points in their win the other night. Now, the wins have been hard to come by, but she's averaging just under 17 points, just over 6 assists, and just over 5 rebounds a game so far this season. She's top 15 in the WNBA in scoring. She leads this the Fever in everything but, I believe, rebounds per game. The turnovers have been somewhat of an issue, but that's showbiz, baby. The bottom line is she's going out here and she's already showing that she's adjusted pretty well from what we saw early on in here. And so if there are people that want to make a basketball-related argument that, yes, even Caitlin Clark at this point could be worthy of going and being a part of the depth of this Olympic roster somewhere, I would listen to that. The problem we are again running into is people outside of their depth trying to force her onto this team for the non-basketball reasons. There are plenty of people I've seen that cover the W diligently that can make arguments that, yeah, she absolutely should be left off this roster or she absolutely should not, based on the historical precedent, based on, listen, some of the politics that we've seen around the Olympics in general that tend to skew towards UConn and the conversation that people will have there that we're not going to have on this show. All of that stuff, yeah, you can do that. But like you said, Dad, what this reeks of is people parachuting in again and going, well, Caitlin Clark has a lot of fans, and Caitlin Clark good for TV numbers. And why wouldn't you just put her on for that reason alone, which is silly and antithetical to competition. And the people that tend to make that argument are always the one that bark and belch about participation trophies and giving everyone stuff without having earned it. And so we're running into that problem again where the speed at which we have grown in the conversation around the women's basketball side has far outpaced people's knowledge of the actual game and the history of the game. And so we run into a lot of these problems. And Dad, I think that's just one of those things that's unfortunately going to take time to work out for the amount of attention paid to the game to catch up to the knowledge of the casual fan, not the diehards who have been there, but the casual fans who now want to be more of this part of this conversation.
There is a first to this, though. This is the first time since the 76 Olympics in Montreal. Since then, we have had the women's team has had at least 2 players under 25 on the team since 76. This is the first time there's no player under 26 on this team. But this team is stacked. I mean, and we own the gold. So that's what you do, man. If the pros are allowed to play, you stack this team up and you go win another gold. So I get both sides of it, but to your point, and you're right, and that's what we've seen a lot of, is the people who are parachuting in really trying to be very loud on, well, we have no idea what used to be done, but you need to do it this way now because of Caitlin Clark, and that's just not the way it works.
No, again, because this is, as you said, should be, and we know most of sports, while we love to champion it as this meritocracy, there is still a bunch of insanely political stuff that goes on in all sports. And that's before we get to the Olympic level, where some parts of it are inherently political. And there can certainly be aspects of it when the way this roster is chosen. But at the end of the day, what you just described, Dad, the fact that I think Sabrina Ionescu and Jackie Young are both the youngest on that roster at 26 years old, and both, like Caitlin Clark, were number 1 picks. That's a testament to the depth of talent in this league now, where maybe years ago you needed some of those younger players that were coming in fresh off prolific college careers to go out here and supplement this roster. as we have heard from people, you have a ton of incredibly talented women in this league. It is one of the most competitive leagues on earth because of the small number of teams right now before we get a couple more of these expansion rosters. And so this is a reminder of, hey, the game has continued to grow outside of just the handful of names that we've talked about of the young players coming into this league. And so it's going to still be a team that's incredibly well watched and incredibly well covered. If you put Caitlin Clark on it, would the TV ratings absolutely see a bump? Yes, that has been indisputable. There, as we say all the time with replay, indisputable video evidence. You put Caitlin Clark in there, there's going to be more eyeballs on it. That's just how she operates right now. But that doesn't mean you go and hand her a spot on the roster if you truly don't think that she's one of the people ready for that. And that should be pretty easy for everybody involved to understand.
And we'll see where life is in 4 years, right? In 4 years, in 28, it's in LA. It's on our home turf. You got to expect she's going to be on it, but that's 4 years from now. Who's going to be a new name? You know, probably not someone who's broken all her records, but there'll be other names coming up. We've talked about the incredible freshmen in the game now, so that's 4 years from now. So I would fully expect her to be on that team. It's on our home soil in LA. It's going to be. So this is, I guess, glass half full in this to me, because I always like to go that route, is we continue to talk about the WNBA, and Caitlin Clark is going to get some rest. That at the end of the day, she has no choice over this. She's not going to be on the Olympic team, right? She wasn't on it. So they have a long break for the Olympics. She is going to get to chill a little bit, which I'm sure at the end of the day, she's going to be pretty happy about.
And you have to give some credit to Caitlin Clark. You mentioned she dropped 30 after this, which I think is great in its own right. But what she's had to take on mentally, and the fact that she's been able to just brush it off. And this is a big deal. I'm sure she, at some point in her mind, thought she might make the team. But the fact that it comes out now and Dawn Staley sort of at the top of this being one of the 5 person who did not select her to make the team, people are trying, and this is, I guess, media is a big part of it. Media is trying to make it these certain people, these former players, these current coaches versus Caitlin Clark. And Caitlin Clark's like, I'm just here to play basketball. This is my job now. So I do want to give the credit to her because it seems like everyone's trying to make it her versus this person. And she's like, I'm just not going to have that.
No, it's an incredible amount of mental fortitude. And it's not surprising the more you read about her. And if anyone missed this during the NCAA tournament run, I would highly recommend that they go and check out the piece that Wright Thompson wrote about Caitlin Clark in the lead up to the championship game that takes you inside. This is a maniacal competitor. Like, when I read about her, it felt like reading about Kobe Bryant, the way that she approaches the game. And so, yeah, I'm sure she was absolutely dead disappointed about not making this roster. Yeah, but bringing up the rest is a hugely important point. She said, I get to get in the weight room during this time. I get to work on recovery. I get to do all these things because while we've had all these debates about, hey, are people gunning at her because she's the number 1 overall pick? Yeah, probably a little bit, yes, because that's how the game goes. Are there this generational gap or the vets versus the rookies that we don't actually think is a real thing in here? The bottom line is still, physically, they've been trying to whoop her ass. This is an incredibly physical league, and she is not a big woman. And so being able to have this time to recover in the middle of the season with the exemption that comes with the USA basketball roster at a time where she's already, again, top 15 in the WNBA in scoring. She's already doing some of the things that we expected her to do that just didn't happen within the first few weeks when we expected, or some people expected her to come right out of here and be the best player in the W, which wasn't realistic. Now we actually, during the home stretch of a season where, yeah, the Fever are still not going to be a team that we're talking about as meaningful playoff contenders, but could start to show some of those signs of personal growth for her based on this little gap in time that would be huge for her trajectory just as a player, not the savior of the sport that so many people want her billed as.
I think the conversation about the W has gone even higher and has happened more than we even thought with Caitlin Clark coming into the WNBA of what she was going to bring. And not all the conversation good. This is one of those, is any publicity good publicity for a sport that is growing and getting more and more publicity, because it hasn't all been great publicity, but it's being talked about way more than it's ever been talked about before. So I think it's surprisingly enough, it's even exceeded what we thought was going to happen with the talk of the WNBA since Caitlin Clark out there. It has gone even higher than that.
It is interesting, and again, I referenced that Roger Sherman tweet saying Caitlin Clark is already a top 3 modern era discourse generating athlete along with LeBron and Tim Tebow. And it's always fascinating to think about what goes into this. And obviously, listen, with Caitlin, there's the racial component that's been talked about plenty, which is absolutely a factor in this conversation and most conversations in the way things like this get digested. But this is also basketball, a sport where, Dad, because of the way that she burst on, where she's at a program in Iowa that, while they had been a team that was consistently an NCAA tournament team and a very good program, became a program vying for national championships almost solely because of the incredible ability of this one player. The fact that in a sport where, listen, in the men's game, we know you get all these high-flying dunks and all these things that haven't lived in the women's game in the same way. Caitlin Clark plays this very exciting brand of basketball that's much more akin to a Steph Curry and the modern form of the game that we've seen leak into all parts of basketball. The game, the way that she, in a sport that really seems to put on a pedestal people that can go out there and create on their own and be this singular force. It's what we've talked about grappling with the Celtics team. All of that at the right time, where women's sports had already been seeing an uptick in their coverage, and the opportunity created this perfect storm where now for her, thankfully, she seems used to it already at this point, but this isn't going to slow down, Dad. It seems like every single time we get a new first with Caitlin Clark, this is going to be the ripple effect of it, what happens. And like you said, hopefully the ancillary benefit is, hey, the people that do turn into the Olympics, maybe because they're ticked off or want to see what happens without it, are going to get to see A'ja Wilson be the best women's basketball player on the planet right now. Going to get to see Sabrina Ionescu and Chelsea. Brittany Griner back out here on a big stage. We know she's been back in the W, but after her entire ordeal, there are so many storylines to run with this team that if people give a chance, I'm sure are going to love.
There are. And then also, too, even go to this rookie class. I mean, we keep talking about Caitlin Clark, but Angel Reese is putting up some big stat lines. Cameron Brink's team, the Sparks, just beat the best team in the game in the Aces. You know, so you're seeing some of these other rookies have good impacts on their team. And that's the idea. If you go to a bad team like Caitlin did, your job is to try and build that team back up. But we're seeing good basketball with the rookies. And then you're right. We're going to showcase all the great players who have been in the league for a while in the Olympics, as they're going to, I think, cruise their way to another gold medal.
Yeah, no, that part of it always helps too. We love winners around here. And we have always seen, that's why we've seen everyone gravitate in the past towards the U.S. women's national team in soccer, because whether or not certain people have disagreed with their political beliefs at times, man, they go out there and they get dubs. And we love nothing more in red, white, and blue than being able to thump our chests and talk about the winners that we love. And Cameron Brink's going to have a chance. You mentioned repping for that rookie class on the 3-on-3 team that's going to go over for the Olympics, which is very exciting. The first rattle out of the box for that, and now getting her as one of the names and faces of this class to go over and be involved in that moment. It's going to be awesome to see that. So again, everybody just stop and take a deep breath. I know it's hard, and man, God, this dangerous to say out loud, but maybe going through this now again as many times as we have with the Caitlin Clark discourse, maybe we'll get a little bit better at it. Maybe we're getting enough reps at this to where we'll not be so freaking loud stupid, and we'll actually listen to some of the people that have been around for this longer than the few months that most fans have been tuning in, or a lot of the new fans, I should say, have been tuning in now. And maybe just listen to the people that know what they're talking about. I think Ryan Clark said that on the pivot. We probably need to go and extra rely on all of the wonderful voices that have been amplifying the W for a long time now.
It's kind of like the Taylor Swift fans that parachuted into football because of Travis Kelce, trying to talk about football at times, where you just
you know what? At least Taylor Swift fans care to learn. Most of them come in and consume information at a faster pace. I can say this confidently as one of the foremost intersections of the Venn diagram of Swifties and NFL fans here. The aptitude for Swifties coming into football, the new Swifties that weren't already football fans, infinitely higher than the people that have been parachuting in new to the W right now in terms of their desire to learn about the product that was already there before them and then add that into their knowledge base here. I will put on for my Swiftie brothers and sisters, and that much at least, Dad.
You're right. The people just diving into the WNBA right now, if I think, want to give Caitlin Clark a statue already as one of the greatest ever. When everybody, you said it best before, everybody take a breath. All right, pull the reins, take a breath. Everything is going to be just fine.
Everything is going to be just fine. And everything was just fine over this weekend in sports while I was gallivanting around Sin City, running through the desert, not looking for any of the things that Alan mentioned in The Hangover. There was also a lot of other sports going on. So coming up next, we'll celebrate that. The all-weekend team here on GoJo and Golic next.
Yes, it is time for the all-weekend team, the best of the best players, plays, games, what we haven't talked about yet in the sports world over the weekend. And we did talk about the NHL playoffs, and I just have to mention, guys, I was in Miami over the weekend, and I watched the Celtics game on Thursday, and then I watched the Panthers game on Saturday. And you would think I was in Boston. I don't know what's wrong with Florida fans, but I couldn't find one fan excitedly watching the game. There seemed to be more people rooting for the Celtics on Thursday, which of course was fun for me, but I don't know. Florida people need to figure it out. I felt the same way when I lived in LA too. I felt like nobody cares about sports over there. But also I'm a spoiled Boston fan, so maybe that's just me because we're crazy. So curious what you guys picked up from over the weekend, GoJo.
They also have sunshine and other stuff in both of those places that are fun to do, so they don't have to make sports their whole personality like we do in the Northeast. It's the dirty secret we don't talk about in public as much, but the Midwest and the Northeast, we don't have much else. As someone who has spent time in both of those places, the people with the sunny spots and the fun stuff to do tend to go do that stuff until sports becomes cool enough for them to latch onto. So I will defend them somewhat as a transplanted Los Angelino right now, enjoying embedding in the culture. And Dad, we'll see if any of them make their way into the all-weekend team here. We'll go honorable mention, second team, and first team this weekend. And honorable mention, I'll start off with one of the Coastal elites that managed to go out there and get a win. So the Yankees got a win last night to avoid getting swept by the Dodgers in a series this weekend that a lot of people looked at as a World Series preview. But my honorable mention goes to Aaron Judge. He hit his major league leading 24th home run in the game last night, but has been on an absolute tear over the last 30-plus games. Our buddy Buster Olney at ESPN tweeted this out the other day. Prior to last night, in his previous 32 games, Aaron Judge is batting .409 with 17 home runs, 39 RBI, and an OPS of 1.553. It's the highest OPS for any major league player over a 32-game span since 2004 Barry Bonds. And again, much like Wilt Chamberlain's stats in the NBA, anytime you're mentioned alongside Barry Bonds and some of the steroid-era guys, pretty good indication that stuff's going right. So Aaron Judge and that big-time contract and that big mountain of a man going out there and whooping some baseball's asses so far this season as the Yankees have looked phenomenal.
One thing that will never grow old in Major League Baseball is everybody loves the long ball. Everybody loves to see the home run. So, I mean, Aaron Judge is just absolutely cracking it yet again. My honorable mention goes to Travis Kelce, and it has nothing to do with football. And shockingly enough, it has nothing to do with Taylor Swift. David Njoku, the tight end for the Cleveland Browns, had a charity softball game in Cleveland, actually right by my house. The Lake County Captains, their minor league baseball club. Mike, you've been obviously to my old house in Willowick, Ohio, right down the road as you would drive to my brother Greg's in Menor. You pass the stadium right there. You can see it off the highway, minor league stadium. Very, very cool. And there was a home run contest as well. Travis Kelce came in right when it was about to start, hit 11 home runs. He played baseball in high school as well. I remember went to high school, he and Jason in Cleveland. Hit 11 home runs, hit that last one, did the old bat flip and did a run around, the celebratory run around the bases as well. But showed some incredible, as we've been talking about, versatility with athletes in one sport to another sport, came in and just treated the softball very, very poorly as he kept knocking it out of the park.
The only thing I can come back to with all this, because it's great, and Travis Kelce is a legitimate athlete that could have probably had its success in a bunch of different sports at a high level, is how difficult it is to register on the Richter scale in the house that he's now a part of with Taylor Swift, where it's like, oh, babe, what did you do this weekend? Well, I stimulated the global economy. I went to a new city and enriched the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Babe, what did you do? I cracked 11 dingers in a celebrity softball game. Feeling pretty great about this one, babe.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking. But Travis, awesome dude. Out there supporting one of his tight end brothers. You love to see it. Dad, let's go on to second team here. Got to give it up for Scotty Scheffler. All he does is win, no matter what. And money on his mind, he can never get enough. 8 under and wins at Memorial this weekend ahead of the U.S. Open coming up next weekend here. It's his 5th win on the tour this year, and winning $4 million is one of the signature events, so the bigger purses that we've heard over the last few years for golf. He's now over $24 million on the year, breaking his own PGA Tour season's earning record from last year as he continues in this new era with some of the bigger purses to just dominate on the stage, Dad. He had his new baby there with his wife also getting to celebrate with Jack Nicklaus on the green there, and he just picks up right where he leaves off each and every week, being the most dominant golfer on the planet.
Tell you, who makes out outside of his family with what he's winning is his caddy. His caddy get like 10%, and you wonder, you're someone like that, you're probably throwing in a nice bonus as well, what kind of living you make as Scotty Scheffler's caddy. While I'm giving my second team, Claudia, could you look up already what the odds are for Scheffler in the U.S. Open? I mean, are we getting to
Scotty versus the field?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be getting there. I'll go to you in a second. I'm going to give my second team first. Go and get that up. But I think how close are we getting to Tiger versus the field and Scotty versus the field? My second team goes to a domer, Mike, Arike Ngumbawale. She plays with the Dallas Wings. Now, their team is not very good. They're 3-7, but she set a WNBA record. She had all 10 games this year. She has been over 20 points. That is a WNBA record, consecutive games to start a season. over 20 points. We keep talking about Caitlin Clark, or people do, as a snub from the Olympic team. Arike's name has been brought up as a snub on the Olympic team. So I would look to probably see her in 28 as well in LA on that Olympic team. But kudos to her for setting that record at 10 and going, right? Because, like I said, they're 3-7, so 10 games in, but all over 20 points. So congrats to her. All right, Claudia, what do we have early odds on Scottie Scheffler?
For the Open, are you asking?
Yes. Yeah.
He's 3-1, and the next shortest odds are 10-1 for Rory. So that goes to show you. And we were talking about the last few majors, he was 4-1, and that was one of the lowest odds we've seen in a while. So 3-1 has to be historic. I'll have to look that up. There is something you can also bet. You can do the big guns versus the field. The field is the -200 favorite. Scheffler, McIlroy, and Schauffele are +150. So any of them to win. So that's another market if you don't want to go Scheffler at 3-1. But that shows you how much respect he's getting.
I was going to say, we will have that conversation in the lead up. I think we're getting close to that point here, but we're also getting close to the end of this segment. So we'll go first team all weekend, Dad. And I got to give it up here. I got to watch all 5 sets of the beauty that was the final of the French Open. Carlos Alcaraz goes out and beats Alexander Zverev in 5 sets to win the French Open. He becomes yet another Spaniard who's taken over and taken hold of that tournament where we know we've seen Nadal dominate for so many years. He has now become, though, Dad, just the 7th player to win a slam event on all 3 surfaces, joining Jimmy Connors, Mats Wilander, Andre Agassi, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic. And he's the youngest to achieve that feat, having just turned 21 in May. He narrowly edged out Nadal, who hit that trio at 22 years and 7 months in 2009 at the Australian Open. But, Dad, an absolute dogfight of a match here. Zverev's huge, towering 6'6" German. And Carlos Alcaraz, who's one of the most exciting young athletes in any sport, goes out and continues to show why he is probably in line to be one of the next greats coming off that golden era of men's tennis.
Yeah, we're in that next era, right? I think we're definitely officially there. And what an athlete he is, in watching him play. So kudos to him. My first team goes to Mackenzie Long. She's part of the Ole Miss women's track team, and they had the NCAA Outdoor Track and Field Championships. And she won the Triple Crown in less than 3 hours, Mike. Less than 3 hours. She won the 100-meter, 200-meter, and was part of the 4x100-meter relay team. She's just the 7th woman to sweep those events. And Ole Miss became just the 4th team in women's outdoor history to sweep all 3 events as well. But to win those races, all of them, in less than 3 hours. So complete tip of the cap. I mean, we always talk about the fastest people, the strongest, the fastest, and all that. Well, congrats to her. Congrats to Mackenzie Long for dominating in the sprints and then helping her team dominate in that relay win as well. 3 wins, made the sweep, only the 7th woman to ever do it.
And we know the 4x1, obviously she had teammates, but those other ones, individual races in between that, Alcaraz and the tennis court, the grueling nature of these individual sports where it is just you going out there and having to try and replicate that success inside that tight window. Incredible job. Congratulations to Mackenzie Long and the Ole Miss track team. Coming up next, the face of the NFL as we get ready to drop yet another football video game on GoJo and Golic.
back here on GoJo and Golic. We're going to be getting the cover of Madden, but not yet. We have the release date though, June 11th. It is a Tuesday. They released this interesting video. Of course, we can't see the face, but lots of people are speculating it would be one of the best players in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey, GoJo. Any other name come to mind for you?
Well, I mean, so you look at recent history, going back in like the last few years, Lamar Jackson in 2021, Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady in 2022, John Madden in 2023, and Josh Allen last year in 2024. And Dad, the face of the NFL conversation, I feel like is pretty easy. Until further notice, it's Patrick Mahomes' league. He is the best quarterback in the NFL, far and away. There's not even a discussion about that. His team is in dynasty mode right now, but we know it can't just be Patrick Mahomes every year on the cover. So Claudia mentioned Christian McCaffrey, Dad. Is there any other direction you could see them going on this? Because it seems like the reigning offensive player of the year probably has a pretty good opportunity for that.
Yeah, I would. I still can't believe there has been a certain someone who is retired that hasn't been on it. There hasn't been a defensive player since 2015 and Richard Sherman. How has Aaron Donald not been on the cover? How is that possible? So if he hasn't been on the cover, I don't know if you could put a defensive player on it. Because if you pick a defensive player now, who are you picking? You know, is it Myles Garrett? You know, I mean, I'm not sure what direction to go. And if you didn't go Aaron Donald, I don't know if I'd be starting somewhere this year with a defensive player. So how about Christian McCaffrey? How about Tyreek Hill? How about this? Not Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Mahomes has been on twice already. How about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift? How about that to get the football people? Yeah, get the football people mad, right? And put her on the cover with Travis Kelce.
So you're not far off of what my thought was, which is maybe just put Travis on there, because while he's not the face of the NFL in terms of the best player, he is one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end of all time. We had that discussion last year. And he's also the most popular player overall when you talk about NFL players right now because of the influx of Swifties that have parachuted in on this. And so I do think in the interest of, hey, giving yourself a lot of buzz, because let's be honest, the Madden diehards are going to buy the game no matter what. It doesn't matter for them.
Yes, they are.
If you're trying to maybe buzz up a little bit of added interest in there, you put Taylor Swift's boyfriend on the cover of that and you don't think twice about it. A bunch of defensible football reasons. And this isn't like we're talking about with the U.S. Olympic women's basketball roster where it's supposed to be this meritocracy here. This is about slinging product, baby. This is about selling. And so why not sell with one of the guys that's hotter than fish grease right now, as Claudia shakes her head over on that side?
Yeah, I mean, CMC's hotter than fish grease too. His girlfriend's pretty hot too. Like, she's not as famous as Taylor Swift, but I don't know. I get it, the popularity thing, but I feel like CMC is, I don't know. He doesn't have the music fan base, whatever. I just feel like I also don't play Madden, so I don't really care. But CMC, I feel should get it.
How many Swifties do you think would buy it if she was on the cover with Travis and they would never open the package?
If she was on 100%. It. Oh, yeah. Well, maybe they'll do you could do like an extra edition of it. I see where you're going, Senior.
If Travis and her are on one of the covers. You know how they do, because they only have the one cover, but they should. You ever think about regional covers? Remember, when the college books or the pro books come out, Mike, the magazines? Oh, yeah. Depending on where you buy it, who's on the cover. At times, maybe how about a regional thing? But even if not, I'd be fine with Travis and Taylor on it because, again, this is about slinging product. And there would be so many games bought that wouldn't be used by Swifties. It would be amazing. But if you're asking me straight out, Christian McCaffrey is probably the guy. Though, how about Dan Campbell? Any thought of putting a coach on there? Or Dan Campbell with a mean look on his face?
I'm all for spreading Dan Campbell propaganda to anybody who will have it there. He should be the face of the NFL as far as I'm concerned. He's at least right now one of the faces of coaching in the NFL as we have turned over from the Bill Belichick era in all of this. Someone who won't be on the game's cover, though, or probably wasn't going to be anyway, Darren Waller, the Giants tight end, announced his retirement yesterday in a video. And Claudia, this was something that I think most Giants fans were kind of preparing for. He hadn't been with the team all offseason. This is something he had been weighing, but he put it on wax yesterday.
Yeah, and only with the team for one season, 12 games. You mentioned it probably wouldn't have been on the Madden cover anyways. Just 52 catches, 522 yards, and a touchdown. Of course, played the first 2 seasons with the Ravens, the next 6 with the Raiders. He had a lot to say in a YouTube video that he posted on Sunday. Take a listen.
eternally grateful for the game of football. I wouldn't be able to have this conversation or to think things through or be self-reflective if it wasn't for an opportunity to save my life and go to rehab, which the NFL offered me. They also gave me an opportunity to, reestablish myself, to, come back into the world and do something productive, provide an example, be a leader, be a difference maker, in my craft, but also just in the day-to-day wherever I go.
So that rehab following the 2017 overdose, he's been very vocal about struggling with addiction. So of course, respect in that aspect. But at 31 years old, I know the question was, will he return to the NFL? How effective will he be? It's always sort of a sensitive subject, though, when you do have something like that as part of the conversation, GoJo.
Yeah, I think you can say two things at once, right? One, Darren Waller for turning his life around. We had a lot of fun with the music video and stuff like that. He's obviously got stuff going on in his personal life now, but what that guy's overcome, certainly incredible, and you hope that that remains the case for him in the future. But, Dad, the other part of this is interesting to me was thinking about this relative to Daniel Jones' tenure with the Giants.
Yes.
Because we've talked so much about him as a quarterback and whatever his flaws or perceived flaws are from the outside looking in. But Darren Waller is another example of their failed ability to go and put meaningful weapons around Daniel Jones during his now 6 years as the Giants quarterback. They had the Kenny Galladay contract that aged like milk, unfortunately, during his tenure. And now Darren Waller, who was really the only meaningful weapon they brought in last offseason to try and help this offense take the next step. And so, Dad, as we go into that final year of guaranteed money on the extension that Daniel Jones signed, this is yet another blow to a team that, now they brought in Malik Neighbors to try and stretch the field, but Daniel Jones, this Giants team, I don't think is going to be all that good this upcoming season. I struggle to see a world where they make the kind of improvement that leads to Daniel Jones sticking around as the Giants quarterback. And while I always thought the pick was a bit of a reach at number 6 in the draft way back then, it's still hard to look at the situation as we see other teams that build around their young quarterbacks, give them a bunch of weapons early to try and learn. The Giants have really, I think, failed to do that for Daniel in any meaningful way during his tenure as the Giants quarterback.
Completely agree. You look at what Chicago has done to try and help their young quarterback like this year, not so much for Fields, but this year, it's been impressive. Now, Malik Neighbors, we'll see what he does with Darius Slayton. He led or as far as leading the team in receptions last year. Wan'Dale Robinson, Waller, I think, was second, but still not a monster threat, right? So they brought in a couple of tight ends in the offseason, Stoll and Manhertz. I mean, guys that really haven't done a lot. They drafted a tight end in the 4th round of this draft. So I agree. I don't think, and then you lose Saquon Barkley, who catches the ball so well out of the backfield. So I do not think they have helped Daniel Jones at all or very much in the weapons category to kind of help him along and give him that better shot. And just for the sake of a team, for getting Daniel Jones, insert quarterback here, weapons to throw to, I do not think they have done a very good job of that at all. And now they lose one that at least of the people they had last year was one of the higher productive ones, even though it wasn't very productive, Claudia.
Good. Well, yeah, I want to bring in the win total because you're saying insert quarterback here, team overall. The book's not loving their future. The total set at 6.5, favored to the under, just 6 wins last year. You mentioned not losing one of the weapons. GoJo, are you going under here? Would you take the plus money to the over?
I mean, I'd be inclined to go under. You could maybe argue that because Malik Neighbors is going to give him a little bit of injection of juice on offense, but protection's still going to be something that gets brought up a lot. Andrew Thomas, we know, is great, and when he was healthy last year, continued that standard. But can Evan Neal make that kind of jump? John Michael Schmitz, who they drafted in the middle of that offensive line. There are just so many questions about this team in a division where the Washington Commanders have a chance to get better in a hurry because of what they've done at quarterback, bringing in Jaden Daniels. And then I think the Eagles also rebound strongly inside that division. There's just too much there for me to count on the Giants making that similar kind of jump going into the season. So I would be fading them in what could be Daniel Jones' final year in that blue uniform. His future, uncertain. Our future here ends with this, that, the third coming up next on GoJo and Golic. All right, y'all, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. If you miss us there, best of GoJo and Golic, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you get VSiN on the radio. And if you miss us in either of those spots or any of our great guests, shout out to ESPN's John Buccigross for joining us earlier to talk about Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final going off tonight on ESPN. You can get that wherever you get your podcast or right here as soon as we get done on YouTube. And guys, let's get to this to start things off here. F around and find out has become one of the great memes of our time. And this Spanish speed walker absolutely found out in the European Championships over the weekend. So we had the 20-kilometer race walk as the first medal event of the European Championships. And Laura Garcia Caro was smiling and celebrating. She already had the flag on. She thought she was cruising to a bronze medal with about 2 meters left in the race. And that's when she got quite literally walked down by Ludmila Ulyanovska from the Ukraine, who passed her in those last 2 meters. And Dad, you can see, for anyone not watching here on the DraftKings networks, the elation, the fist pumps, leading to the utter despair and the oh bleep look on her face when she gets past in that last minute is some of the purest form of deep despair that I have ever seen.
You have to see that. Anybody who has not seen the video, you have to see the video. This is, I mean, again, the flag tucked in, draping over her like a cape as she's coming to the finish line, the smile on her face, as Mike mentioned, the fist in the air, and then just the look of, you got to be kidding me, as she gets passed for the bronze. I mean, I've seen I think it was a high school 100-meter race where the kid was winning and right before the finish line looked to his right and started to put his hand up and fell down right before the finish line. I mean, gang, finish the race. You know, it's like the football players that have the open run to the end zone and drop the ball. I was just going to say, this is Deshaun Jackson. This is Deshaun Jackson. Yes. Finish the play, finish the race. There's plenty of time to celebrate. Oh my God. She is going to be sick for so long. That will haunt her for the rest of her life. As we've always talked about, Mike, athletes always think about the worst things that happen to them, because I could relive everything about my high school wrestling match that I lost, where I was ranked number 1 in the state to win, and I took 3rd because I lost my first match. That will live in infamy in my mind, always over anything good that happened. That is going to haunt her for the rest of her days.
I think the toughest part with this is speed walking is such an inherently sassy sport because you have the hip swivel that goes along with it. So when things are going good and you're getting ready to celebrate, it already looks like you're doing the dance, you're ready to go. And so a horrified hip swivel walk towards the finish line is absolute nightmare fuel. Claudia, speed walking, where are you at on this as a real sport that we celebrate?
All I know is my mom could enter and she'd probably win. I feel like growing up, I always thought my mom was the fastest walker in the world. And as I watched those women, I didn't realize this was a sport. But yeah, just the golden rule, man. You can't celebrate until you're up on that podium. But speed walking is, I feel like they're also running though. Like when you're watching them, they're basically,
Yeah, it looked like a little bit of a jog at the end. I was going to split hairs because I don't know the speed walking manual that much, but this is like handball, where this is one of the sports that people parachute in. And they're like, oh, I could do this probably if given the opportunity. But let's go to celebrating something in that, Claudia, as Damar Hamlin went out here and had himself a weekend on the basketball court.
Yeah, he held a charity basketball game in his hometown in Pittsburgh, and I think the best part of this is that he hit the game-winning 3 to win it. He's like, I'm going to host this event, and then I'm going to beat everybody with this shot, which was cool. But celebs, athletes were in attendance. Russell Wilson showed up. Seemed to be a lot of charity events this weekend, but very cool of Damar Hamlin. He held a CPR class as well to help education around that. But we know how this is. Again, it comes to the NFL players playing basketball, and there's a clear sign they can do it.
The step back 3, right? I mean, he's going toward, and then he steps back and pops the long shot, and then does something that I wish I could have ever done in my career: take his jersey off and run around shirtless. I mean, I would have loved to have done that once in my career. Never had the body to be able to do that. But yeah, hit the game winner and then run around and take your shirt off. I always love that. That's one of the first things we see it in soccer all the time that people do, is just want to take their shirt off.
Well, Dad, it's tough to do in football because you got the pads and everything else that you got to contend with there. So it's not really conducive in that sport. Even if you had had a body worth celebrating, which neither you or I did, it would have been almost impossible to pull that off there. My beef here is Damar Hamlin did the thing that always pissed me off about receivers and skill players, which is when they'd score touchdowns, you run away from everybody. My fat ass is back here trying to run down here and get hype with you. I want to get in on the frame, and you're screaming up down the sideline running a 4-3, and I just have to trot over there and get ready to go on field goal block where some defensive end is going to come screaming off the edge and try and tattoo me. You ruin the fun for everybody else, offensive skill players. When you run away, run towards the fats. Stop running away from us.
I agree. I agree. Guys, I see you guys. I see those old linemen running in there to get in the celebration. Then they just stand there as someone's doing a dance or doing something and then just run to the sideline. You're like, whoa, what the hell? You know, am I the gum on the bottom of your shoe? We all did this together. I'm with you there. But I didn't even mean on the football field. Listen, when I was in Philadelphia, we had a traveling basketball team in the offseason that went around and played against faculties and firehouses and police departments. And I sucked at basketball anyway, so I was never going to hit one of those shots. But that would have been a time where maybe if I did, I could have taken my jersey off and run around. But it would have been, people would have screamed and left.
All right, Dad, you know what? This is your opportunity. You're going to be playing again in that American Century Classic in Tahoe coming up in July of this year. Yeah. They've got that 18th hole. That's the party hole right by the water there. You're in much better shape now than you ever were as a football player, and your goal is to be most improved this year. I say if you lace a nice shot on one of those holes, you got to pop the tarp and go over to the boats by the water there. It's the perfect setting, and it would give us a nice viral moment that we could air on the show later on.
I was going to say, or you take your shirt off after a good show. You have an opportunity every day, Monday through Friday.
That is straight. You know what? Claudia is not
selling
wrong.
a good show.
That's not going to happen.
From celebration to complete and utter devastation, Claudia. Let's get to the third here. Is some wedding protocol for James Harden went horribly wrong.
Yeah, James Harden was at a wedding, and of course everybody knows the bouquet toss. His girlfriend ended up catching it, and we're going to show the video, but if you haven't seen it, I don't know what you guys compare this to, but there's so many memes that are going to be made out of this. Basically, deer in headlights is what comes to mind.
Yeah.
Well, and like anyone who's unfamiliar, the person who catches the bouquet is supposedly the one that's getting married next. And James Harden, Dad, did not look thrilled by that news. Like, what I want to know is because his girlfriend right there celebrating, gave him a big hug. He's giving the eyes over top. I don't know if she saw that reaction in the moment or if she's going to see this video after. I can't imagine that's going over well on the home front.
No. And plus, she wasn't really in the mix for this thing. If you watch the video of it, there are all the women up there, and that bouquet got tapped a couple of times. It didn't get caught outright twice. It got tipped all the way to the back to where the guys were standing, and his girlfriend was actually standing right in front of him, and all of a sudden, the bouquet fell right in front of her. She had no intention of fighting for it up with the rest of her group. It fell in front of her, so she picked it up, and he immediately had those eyes and the look of his face after missing a 3 in the playoffs, of like, oh, God, this is going to be awful here. And, yeah, I don't imagine she's going to see that and be too excited about his non-reaction or negative reaction to it.
All of the memes about James Harden, anytime it's time to actually go out and get a ring, absolutely apply here. What I want to know, Claudia, is as the woman on the show here, when you're in this kind of setting, are you someone that's actually actively trying to get the bouquet and send a message?
I was just going to say I should have sent in my video because I have a video for my friend's wedding over the summer where I almost dislocated my friend's shoulder. We were joking around, but kind of, not really. I shoved her. So we'll have to show it tomorrow because it's a good video. It's a good video.
You shoved her?
Oh, yeah, very hard. Yeah, absolutely.
We need that video.
We need to figure out if this was offensive pass interference by Claudia Belafonte or if she managed to just get that low hand in the effort to send the message to her boyfriend. Hey, it's time to get ready to put up or shut up there, brother. Thanks so much. If you want to put a ring on it with us, download, subscribe, rate, and review this show. Thanks, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.